Today on the show, we're joined by Ron Starling, who for 3 years held the role of content creator to the lead pastor at Transformation Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
This means Ron was working one-on-one with Pastor Mike Todd and helping to direct strategy on social.
We ask Ron all the big questions. How do you decide what goes on the pastor's account versus the church's account? How do you manage posting 5 times per day on Instagram? And how do you get your pastor to trust your ideas even when they sound crazy?
Ron is a wealth of wisdom, and he's incredibly transparent in this interview.
Which is also why we had to ask what provoked him to leave Transformation Church near the end of last year. Let's dive in. Well, hey there, and welcome to the Pro Church Tools Show. We're here to help you and your church navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years. I'm Brady, your host. I'm joined as always by my co-host. It's Alexander Mills.
Hello, hello.
And today we are also joined by Ron Starling, creative genius. Ron and I first met in person in Vegas in 2018, and then shortly after, he was working at Transformation Church, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Most of our listeners might know them because of Pastor Mike Todd. Ron, welcome to the show.
Oh, it is an honor to be here, Brady, Alex. I've been following you forever, so to be on this with you, to have this conversation is the coolest thing. To see you again is the coolest thing, so I'm excited.
Yeah, it's been a while. Just a light pandemic in between our last meeting.
Just
no sweat.
No sweat. It's just a little panoramic.
And speaking of that, you got involved with Transformation, right on the cusp of that. Before that, but then you kind of hit the pandemic there. Can you tell us a bit about how you first got connected to Transformation and your role there that you stepped into?
Yeah, of course. This is one of my favorite stories. So I remember working in a church in Las Vegas. I think I was 22 or 23 at the time. I left. I started this creator journey. This is probably the day that I met you. This is the day that I met you. I kid you not. The day I met you
Wow.
was my last day at my church job in Vegas. I packed up my bags, and if you can imagine the scene in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air where the room is empty, he had his little box in his hand, and I said to myself, or honestly, I said to God, I said, the only other church I would ever work at is Transformation Church. And I met you 3 hours later. And then...
And I said... No.
I wish I could remember. And then 6 months later, I get a call on my phone from the social media director at Transformation Church. And I've known him. We've known each other since 2017, since before he started working there. And then also when they blew up, because we were talking ideas, content, things like that. And he goes, hey, man, I heard that you're not working. And you want to move to Tulsa? And I was like, where's Tulsa again? I don't know if I want to do this. And then I got another call. I was in London at the time. I got another call from one of the executive pastors, and they were like, yeah, man, think about moving to Tulsa. And I'm like, ooh, okay. So I'm praying earnestly, fervently, decide to apply. And this is all 2019. And they offered me the job in May of 2019, and I declined the job. 6 months later, Transformation Conference happens, and then I'm like, yeah, I should probably be here. And then I moved to Tulsa February 2020, right?
Oh, boy.
I'm there for 4 weeks. I have 3 weeks in the building, right? And I remember like it was yesterday, March 15th. I'm recording a video with Pastor Michael. He's like, we're going to have church this weekend. I'm so excited to see you. And I stop recording. I go, hey, I don't think we're going to have church this weekend. He goes, Ron, that's so stupid. It's church. We're going to have church. I go, this church, my friends at this church, and they said, and this church all around the country about our size, they not having church, baby. And he goes, we're going to have church. So we proceed to record the video. I record the video. I edit it. Somebody, not me, puts it on the internet. And then he texts me. He goes, who put that video up? And I go, we're not having church this weekend, huh? And that was the beginning of the panoramic for me and all my friends at TC.
And how long was Transformation not doing in-person services? Because I feel like I remember it being longer than a lot of other churches.
Yeah, it was super long. So that one weekend in March, we didn't open up until October 2022, I believe. So we were closed down for 2 years. And there was way more to it. It wasn't because we didn't want people in the building. It wasn't because we couldn't have we didn't want to have church or online was great. Online was popping, but there was some construction stuff that just was taking way too long, and it was yo, we can't have people in the building while there's still construction. Like the roof was over capacity. I was like, I don't want to be in that building. Like I could die. Like, y'all got too much stuff hanging up there, too many lights. So they prioritized people's safety. And it was also something that like, we were like, we don't need to tell everybody that right now. Let's just fix it. And by the time we opened, we were still doing construction just in places that people didn't need to be. So it was a long process. We're fighting the city, but they got it done and it worked out.
So Ron, for our listeners who might not know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe your skill set, why you had people from Transformation texting you in the first place saying, hey, you want to come move to Tulsa and work?
Yeah.
This guy's getting headhunted.
Yeah.
Dude, it was crazy. So it all starts back then at that church in Las Vegas. So I have, since I could remember, thought I wasn't a creative person. I would look myself in the mirror and say to myself, Ron, you're not creative. And it stole the idea that I could do anything like this. But I made a YouTube video when I was 16 and it got like 150,000 views. And I was like, maybe I do know what I'm doing. Like this is back in 2012. So I met this guy named Sean Cannell. He looked at me and he said, Ron, you are creative. So that changed everything for me. And very shortly after that, I was a kids pastor. Very shortly after that, I ended up taking the reins of social media at that church in Las Vegas. And I just wanted to approach it differently. I thought vertical video was really cool. And this is when stories were just introduced. No one was really taking it seriously. And I was like, yo, what if we made like actual videos on cameras and then edited them, cut them down to 15-second increments, and then posted that on Instagram instead of doing it on your phone. So I did that. I did it with transitions. I did whip pan transitions, in-camera transitions, masking. I did the works, the things that we would normally do in a video. I did it on a story. And stories were big. Everyone was watching stories. So by that time, I was making those videos and then people started talking about it. It just became a thing that people started talking about. And I just kept being consistent. I was the guy in our church, in our city that was known that would make vertical videos. And people were like, I want that for my church. So once that kind of got around, I was like, hey, can I like have a Sunday off to do this at another church? And my pastor was like, that doesn't even make sense. Like you can't not be here on Sunday for another church when you work at this church. And I was like, yo, that's kind of valid. I have to think about this. I have to figure out what I want to do. So I just took it upon myself and I was like, yeah, I'll hit you in 2 weeks. And that was like my 2-week notice. Like it's probably my time to go. And that after that 2 weeks is when that first story happened. And then I started doing things for other people, other churches. And then because I was on my own, I kind of had to figure this out. I had to figure out what worked, what didn't work. And over time, social media became my niche. And not as in like a specific niche within social media, but social media became my thing. Like, and I started to figure out what worked. I started to figure out what trends are, how to utilize them. And that came over time, especially with my time at TC. But social media became my thing. And I just started to understand it. And I started helping build other people's platforms. And it just went up since there.
It's fascinating to draw parallels between your story, Ron, and my own story. Because when I first got started, I was in the city of Edmonton in Canada. And I was just like, someone put a camera in my hand and I made a video for our church. And then other churches were like, yo, can you make a video like that for us?
I remember
and
this.
I never thought of myself as a creative person, but suddenly people are asking me to do things. And then once you kind of have that reputation amongst people you know, then you're like, oh, maybe I could just like teach people online. So it's just fascinating to think about how we think certain things about ourselves. Oh, I'm not X, I'm not Y. And then one person sees something in us. And because of that one person, it was Sean for you, maybe it was my pastor, Brett, back then. And then another person sees it because that person first believed in you. And it shapes the trajectory of your entire life based on what one person said and just you putting in the work in the right place. And then you're known for one thing, then you expand to be known for other things. So if anyone's listening to this, you're like, how to, focusing on one thing, becoming known for a single thing can play such a pivotal role. And pivoting from here, Ron, I want to talk specifically about social that you did for Transformation. One of the things that I remember Pastor Mike saying in a conversation that I heard from him was, I do most of the social media myself. He said this. That's distinct amongst pastors. It's especially distinct amongst pastors of larger churches. And so I'm curious about like, so you're on the team at Transformation. You're creating content, but then Pastor Mike's also creating content on his own. What does that dynamic look like?
It's actually really beautiful because he's thinking differently. He's thinking in the context of like, I'm pushing myself, the church, how God is working in my life, him as a father. There's different facets to who he is. There's different facets to who really everyone is. And a lot of people think that they're just one dimensional. And they only make content in that one pillar is what I call it. And it's like, wait, no, there's many different facets to you. We need to explain to the world how God is impacting all of those things. So if you look at even his social media now, it's not just the church, it's fitness, it's family, it's fatherhood, and then also it's the church. And there's so many different things that you can create within that. So it kind of gave him freedom to make content within those lanes. And all I had to do was say, hey, if you do it like this, you'll never lose. And he was like, bet. So he already had the wherewithal. He knew how to use a camera, an actual camera, even though we opted not to use cameras as much as possible, unless we're making something high quality. Because it's weird when you're like hanging out with your wife and you're like, hold on, let me set up the 5D Mark IV really quick over there. Like that's weird. So I kind of just was like, hey, look, man, these are the things that I think you should be trying. This is a trend. If you could just do this with your wife on a date night, or if you can do this with your family, or if you can fit this in, whatever. And one day it clicked and he was like, Ron, I got it. And I was like, bro, you've been had it. So that plus the content I would make for him from church, that plus the content I would make with him when we're on trips, it was a perfect storm. And that's what I think actually attributes to virality. It's momentum. It's not just one video, it's multiple. A lot of people are like, I just made this one video, and they kind of just like, they're a one-hit wonder. When in all reality, you want to have 5 or 6 videos always going. You want to have multiple videos in your week that adds to the pot. It's a crock pot, and you want to cook this thing. We're cooking. So
yeah, somebody cooked in here, and that's you, Ron. So it sounds to me like Pastor Mike, he's got a bit of an aptitude for this already. But
yes.
If I'm hearing you correctly, you would go to him and you'd say, okay, how about you try this idea? And then he is the one that actually executes on that idea that you gave him. And then in the process of him doing that, he's kind of learning on the job in the trenches. And so he's kind of like raising and upping his own skill in that process. Is that kind of like the sequence that we're talking about here?
Essentially, yeah. And he was already really good. So like there would be some ideas that I would send to him. There'd be some ideas that I would do or some ideas that I would have. And then when I see him, we would execute them together. And it just worked. And especially if it was done on a phone and he has his phone, he could do it too. So it's like, hey, look, I know this kind of makes my job obsolete, but if you could just do that, like we win. And I'm all about that. I'm all about giving people my brain because my brain is worth way more than what I could do with a camera. So it never stops. So even while I'm not there, because I just stepped away a couple months ago, he's still making content. And you can't necessarily, unless you're a real content creator, you can't tell the difference between content that I would make and content that he would have thought of. Or the other person that's working with him her name is Mima. She's incredible. I will sing her praises until I die. Like it's just like we would all work in tandem, and we became one mind, one sound. It actually was incredible. But that's what happens when you have incredible team chemistry. It's what happens when you work together on many different projects. And you actually communicate. And I think we really learned the power of unity together in creativity and structure.
So can you tell me about I want like an actual example. What's one of these actual ideas that you came to him with so that we all understand kind of what you're talking about? And then second to that, how are you coming up with these ideas?
Oh, great. This is amazing. I got your back. So if you're listening, this is how you win on social media, okay? So first, you find a trend, okay? Like a lot of people are against trends. At the end of the day, you're doing exactly what the trend is doing. You're just doing something that no one's looking at. So a trend is not exactly something that's trendy. It's just what people are paying attention to. And if you can get in front of people's eyes, you'll always win. So here's how I did it. For example, if you've ever seen Avengers, and there's a moment with Thanos, and he's like, I finally rest. And I forget what he says at the end of it, but like, it's a moment. It's a huge moment in the movie. It became a trend, right? So I sent him the sound, and I'm like, hey man, we've got to figure out something with this trend. Oh, I finally rest. You're about to go on sabbatical. You like rest. Rest is something that we prioritize here at our church. He was like, okay. He hits me back in a couple of days. I see him, we're in Atlanta, and he goes, yo, I did it. I was like, what'd you do? He's like, I did it. He shows me his phone, and he's like, he shows me the video. He puts the video like in the back of a balcony, and it's just him with a coffee mug, right? With a little coffee mug. And he's like, I finally rest. He's not even saying anything. It's just him. You can't even see him. I finally rest. And so he makes this video, and he actually puts the caption, and he's like, he says something about like sleeping with his wife. And I'm like, yo, like, it's a little controversial. Yeah, but he's married. You should be doing that with your wife. If you're not doing it with your wife, there's something wrong. Okay. We need to talk about that. Let's pray about that. So, it was the moment for me where I was like, oh, he has it figured out. Like, this is perfect. We posted the video within 15 minutes. I kid you not. It was at like 200K. We were on a shoot. By the time we finished the shoot, it was at 600. By the time we were done with the day, it was at 1.5 million. And I was like, yo, I think you got it. Like, it's the trend filtered through what it is that what you already do, filtered through your niche. And if you do that and you make it relatable, you will always win. So that was like my favorite example. And let's see, how I figured that out was I tested it on myself. So for years beforehand, instead of just saying, hey, can you do this video? I did the video and it worked. Like, so I remember early 2020, I started making videos based on things that I've seen and just using them as an invite to church without saying, hey, come to church, because that's super whack. Like, it's 2024. If you're just saying, come to church, let's think of something different. Like, everyone's so creative, and it's your time to be creative. So I started making these funny videos about the Bible, about Jesus, and inviting people to church based on trends. And they were getting 20, 30, 40, 50,000 views. And I just started on TikTok. I just started on Instagram. So I'm like, oh, this is magical. So one day, I was like, if I just utilize this trend, I follow the format, follow the template, and I change the words to what it is that I'm doing, I can utilize this attention to my advantage, and I can show people Jesus in the process. So I figured that out. I sent it to him, and then it worked, and we have just never stopped. So, and there's other little things that we found. That's just for the context of doing fun Instagram reels, not to mention things that like sermon recaps or clips, sermon clips, or graphics, anything like that. There's a strategy for everything. That one just happens to be my favorite and the one that I could do the most because I can just do it on the go.
Well, Ron, it sounds to me like you're describing your function in this team, your function during your time at Transformation, less as like a social media content creator and more as a social media content curator. Like, it sounds like you were really giving vision and guidance. In a way, you were in your relationship with Pastor Mike, like you were discipling him in a way in how to learn and grow, and then eventually like own his own content creation on social. And that's really unique to how we think about this position, this office, if you will, of social media content creator in the church space. But you're talking about like a curation role, and a role not just from the top down, from the church account down to the folks who follow, but like inter-team dimension of like discipleship, of pushing each other and empowering each other to own your own role and grow in it. So can you just talk to us a little bit more for a moment about like how you uncovered that office in yourself to kind of transcend from just being a creator, like just doing the work and posting, to being more of like a visionary, or like working in a team as a curator and pushing each other, you know, that phrase, a rising tide raises all ships, right? It sounds like you really functioned in that role in Transformation. Can you touch on that just for a moment?
Dude, the way that you picked it up is so great. I just love the way that your brain works. Aside from that being a good question, I'm not even trying to like distract you and be like, oh, think about the answer. I know what the answer is. But that's just a big part of who I am. I come from a church. That church in Las Vegas taught me about discipleship. That church in Las Vegas, I spent 5, 6, almost 7 years as a kids pastor. I spent that time and I didn't want to do it. So like in order to like empower people to do something, especially if I didn't want to do it, I had to teach people how to fish. I had to disciple people. I had to give everything I had away and I had to do it in a strategic way that it wasn't draining for me, but it's training for them. So I've always functioned in that way. I'm always discipling people. That third person on the team was my disciple. Like she was a part of my small group. She lived in North Carolina. She moved to Tulsa, literally into my apartment building. She didn't even know. She just was like, yo, I'm moving to Tulsa. And I was like, where are you moving? She was like, this one. And I was like, dude, I live 4 floors above where you're moving. So discipleship is a really big part of my life. I've always had another person with me while I'm doing this thing called life, while I'm doing this thing called ministry. So I've always focused heavily on if you aren't pouring into someone, if you aren't discipling people, because that's what the Bible says. It literally says, go into the world and make disciples. It didn't say like, you got to do it like a certain type of way. Like I'm doing it with Jesus through social media. So that's always been a thing. And honestly, if you're watching, hopefully I've been able to invest in your life in some type of way. Hopefully if you're watching this video, we've already had a moment or if we've had a personal conversation where I've been able to pour into you. I've been able to show you some things because that's a really big part of who I am. And I actually think it's a gift on my life. I'm realizing that it's not something that everyone can do. So to answer your question in short, it's really a part of who I am. And it was instilled in me through my time when I first got saved. When I first got saved when I was 16, the biggest priority in our youth ministry was discipleship. And I've always tried to do that. I didn't even realize that that's what I was doing even at TC with my pastor. But I definitely tried to do that with our team to make sure that we weren't falling through the cracks. And because it can create burnout when you're just like, hey man, like I know you can't do this, but like I'm gonna make you do this. Like no, like let's maximize what your gift already is. Let's maximize who you already are and pull something out of you that you just didn't know that you could do yet, rather than forcing you to do something that you really don't care for. So even for the context of churches with pastors who are more introverted and don't care about things like that, it's actually still possible to do. Hey, you don't have to be loud and proud on Instagram. You can be quiet and sharp. You can be intentional and start small. You know what I'm realizing? I'm realizing that sometimes just setting up my phone while I'm reading my Bible is almost more powerful than trying to do a trend, or like doing a voiceover, or just getting the small things, or even just capturing small moments in my life. That's a really big way to show people how God is working, how God is doing, what God is doing in your church, through your pastor, through your leaders, and so on and so forth. So, it actually is a big part of who I am. And I think it's a hack to creativity on any team. If you can allow people to be who they are through their creativity, they will always flourish rather than trying to fit someone into certain guidelines. That's actually, oh my gosh, it's a whole nother conversation. But I think creatives work really well within structure. And a lot of people think that the structure are the boundaries that keep them from being who they are, when it's not about personality structure. It's about thinking structure, because thinking is actually half the battle within creativity. And if I don't have to think, then I can just create, because your brain works in 2 different ways. If you're left-brained people usually, I believe it's your left-brain people usually are really type A. They're really organized, they're super structured, and right-brain people are super creative. But the thing is, we are all left and right brain people. We have both sides of our brain. But the thing is, doing both at the same time is incredibly difficult. So if you can have someone on your team do that and structure it for you, you're allowing the creatives to actually function creatively. But we still need boundaries. We still need structure, just not in our actual personality. Be who you are and create what you can. So that was long-winded, but it had a little bit of wind behind it.
Oh, it's so good.
One thing that is really standing out to me is thinking about how Pastor Mike really was in a position of humility to accept advice and recommendations from a young person who was relatively new on staff when there's high stakes here for a church of this size with this level of affluence. Like when I was on my social media, director journey at my church plant, and I was like, let's post this thing. And they were like, no. If we had, what's the fallout? Oh, 12 people thought it was stupid, there wouldn't have been that much negative attention that was drawn to it back in 2010 at this new church plant in Canada. Whereas, Transformation and Pastor Mike are on the come up here, and now they're like going to post things about sleeping with their wife, and like what attention that might draw, and so like that just speaks to his character and his willingness to just put himself in a position of humility when I think most people in that position would be resistant to that.
Yeah, that's super true. Here's the thing, and this is what that boundary is. Like, hey, that's a little too far. So there's a couple of things that we have in place. The first thing is this. It's represent. I wear it on my chest. I probably low-key get a tattoo, but that's just too much of a commitment. But represent. It's representing God to the lost and found, right? For transformation in Christ. If I can fit it within that, I'm winning. If I'm taking culture, representing it and saying, hey, look, I know that this was misrepresented. I want to show you what God is actually doing within this, and I'm the conduit for it. It'll always work, right? So that's one filter. Does it fit within our mission, right? Another thing is like we're a high trust and high feedback culture at TC. Like literally, it's like, hey man, we trust you, but just to let you know, we're gonna talk about it and we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna get these details. And on top of that, it's really good for everybody. I don't care who you are. You need an internal hater. Like you need someone in your house that says, that's stupid. And like sometimes I was that person. Sometimes P. Mike was that person. Sometimes Mima was that person. Sometimes Pastor Charles is that person. Like literally there's got to be someone on the inside that's like, no, like, but also at the same time, like not every idea can get shot down. Like, let's just go for it. And the one about his wife, like that was him. Like I wasn't, that was not my caption. That was his idea. We bless God. But there's many things. I remember the first time that that happened. I remember the first time I said something crazy and he trusted me. And I was like, oh, that's kind of wild. Like you really gonna listen to me? He was like, dude, yeah, like this is your job. I was like, that's kind of valid. He's like, I hired you for this. I was like, dude, all right, cool. We're in a meeting. We're planning for his book, Crazy Faith. And we're talking through a couple different things. So it was Crazy Faith book, marketing meeting, plus like what we're going to do for this year when it comes to social media. I had two big ideas. The first one was, we need a slogan for Crazy Faith. Like, it's only crazy till it happens. Everyone already knows that. So we're sitting at the table and I'm like prayed up. I'm like, God, like I pray that this idea works. And we're like, we need a second saying. And I go, yeah, like you got to see it before you see it. And he was like, I like that. I was like, I like it too. Like what you want to do? And he goes, no. Like that's it. You got to see it before you see it. That's what faith is. So, and like he took it and ran with it. When I hear him say that, it's so edifying because he took my idea, I submitted it to him, and he's running with it, and it worked. He trusted me and was like, yo, like, that's great. And in that same meeting, I said this, yo, social media is changing. This is right as Reels were introduced to Instagram, and you're getting rewarded basically for doing Reels first. I was like, yo, if we make every video a Reel, we will not lose. Like, no more recaps over a minute. They've got to be 60 seconds or less because that is what the platform is asking of us. If we do that and we go hard, we won't lose. I remember saying that, and we went from maybe 900K to 1.5 million in just a couple of months. And he was like, all right, Ron said it, like, bro, let's do it. And that was kind of hard on me because that just made all my content that I had to actually make, I had to be less than a minute. But I just remember so vividly. I was like, dang, gotta make my job hard.
Every creative's challenge. We should do this. Okay, great. Go do it. Wait a second.
Wait a minute.
Oh, no. What have I done?
What have I done? So I kind of dug myself into a hole, but I was already making tons of things, and I had a system to create 7 to 10, actually 20 different pieces of content from one sermon every time that he preached. So I was like, let me just work my system and figure out the flow and go from there. So I just remember so vividly, that was the first time that I walked away from a meeting and I felt like, oh, he took what I said super serious and he trusted me. And then he probably walked away from that meeting and said, I'm trusting Ron more. And if he keeps doing this, it'll perpetuate. But one thing that I learned from this book called The Speed of Trust, if you trust first, you can move faster. And don't make people earn your trust. Make people earn your distrust. It's a completely different way of functioning. But I also believe it's the Jesus way of functioning. Trust people and allow people to give them space to earn a mistrust from you. You'll move way faster.
So you mentioned that rapid growth once you pivoted to Reels. As soon as it dropped, we're not waiting. We're embracing it. We're going. And I think, to me, it's fascinating to hear a church of your size, affluence, big pastor, well-known. That book, Crazy Faith, a New York Times best-selling book. So not simply a person that people know in the Christian world,
right,
but like transcending beyond that. And yet you're still saying we need to ride the trends of these platforms. I think if there's any church, any pastor that could say, hey, we set the trends, we do our own thing, and you certainly do. And yet you're still adhering to what the platforms are doing, and not just adhering to it, but doing it with urgency.
Yeah. And here's the thing, because we're not copying anyone. We're like, this is essentially, I have a word for it, I can't remember at the current moment. I want to say that word is pioneering. Pioneering is hard. Pioneering is scary. Doing it first it's countercultural, doing something before everyone else is, but that's what we're called to do. We're set apart. Like, everything that I do is actually based on the Bible. There is not one tactic, there is not one strategy, there is not one mindset that is not already rooted or based in a scripture or a verse or something that has to do with my theology. So like what you're talking about is really just us being set apart. We were made to do this. Let's go do it. And what does that do? It fits within the mission statement. Let's go represent. In order to represent, we've got to do things before everyone else. In order to represent, we've got to do it. We got to do it well, and we got to do it first. So, like, it's not like me nitpicking and saying like this church is doing that and that church is doing this. No. We're actually having conversations with Instagram and saying, hey, look, we want to be the best. Like, what does that look like? Well, we're making this thing or introducing this thing called Reels. We think you should do it. Okay, great. Like, there's no actual reason to not. Like, there's certain things that I don't think that adds value. Like, is it a net negative? Like, or is it a net positive? Or is it net nothing? Net neutral? You kind of have to weigh what those things are. And I believed that making Instagram Reels when video was already a thing and just making them shorter, that's a net positive. The only net negative is that I have to work harder. Dude, I can figure that out. Yeah. It's a net positive. Some things are net negative. I don't really believe in like broadcast channels right now. Like, I think that it needs a little bit more polishing. So right now,
facts.
It's a net neutral for me. I'm not gonna invest energy until I figure out that like this is probably the best strategy that I can run with it. But once it switches for me, it's over. I'm just gonna go for it. So.
Okay, I'm so glad you went there because I wanted to get strategic, I wanted to get practical, wanted to get granular. You talked earlier about how when Instagram stories were new, they came over from inspiration from Snapchat.
Yes.
You were doing these polished stories with whip transitions and cameras. We have a friend here in Canada, Jesse Driftwood, who is like one of the pioneers of that tactic as well.
That's the guy.
We picked it up.
I watched all his videos. Yes. I studied everything Jesse Driftwood did. I even DM'd him. Like, Jesse, if you're watching this video, bro, I kid you not, I'm literally me because of you, bro. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. I just had to do that. Jesse Driftwood is that guy.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Yes. And so Jesse's a good friend of ours, but like we knew that then. Like, watching Jesse do what he was doing then, it was something. He was a pioneer. He was the first person to do that, or at least do it as good or as at scale as he was doing. And we saw how he influenced like global a global trend on this platform, and you're a perfect testament to that. And then you just talked about
the testimony
at Transformation.
of Jesse Driftwood. Literally.
It's so good. But then you just talked about at Transformation when Instagram dropped another new feature. So same platform, different feature, Reels. You guys just heavily invested in that. So right now you've moved on from Transformation. This is February 2024. What social media platform, and specifically what feature of that platform are you looking at and running full steam ahead at investing into that platform and that feature? What is it right now for you?
So here's the thing. Every platform has their own thing. And I would say, don't pick a platform because I'm saying it or we're saying it. Pick a platform that actually works for you, because you're not gonna work hard at something that you kind of don't care about. If you're on Facebook, trust me, there's a way to win on Facebook for you, not for me, but for you. But my preferred platform right now is Instagram. I think it's still that platform that I believe most people are gaining influence, like real influence from. But that does not negate any other platform. I just saw a poll that's saying Instagram has probably the most influence, even though there's less people using the platform. Polished videos, making things in yourself look good is something that people should be doing. So Instagram Reels is actually the thing that I'm still on right now, with a supplement of carousels and photo dumps. And also, I think graphics will be making a comeback very soon.
Wow,
infographics.
Prophet amongst us.
The big prediction.
Because it's a lost art. Most people don't know how to actually do it. So people that make graphics, it's like, yo. But here's the thing: if you're a graphic designer, it's not about flexing. It's not the flex. It's the information. It's the education. It's the value. So it's the same principles from a reel, but just on a carousel or on a graphic. So in a reel, I can tell you what the next 3 best cameras are, and I can tell you that information. Some people just like to read. Okay, great. I'm going to make this for those people that like to read and do the exact same thing, but make it pretty, make it simple and effective, and say, hey, look, if you want to continue this journey, follow me, save this, send this to someone that's looking for a camera. And those are the same things that you would say in a video, but do on a graphic. And then on TikTok, it's a completely different ballgame. On TikTok, I want to see the raw, real, fun, easygoing part of yourself, which is so easy. If you're in a car, you want to talk about your day, just put it on. I know you got a magnet stand in your car. Just go ahead and put your phone there and let's just have fun. Let's have a conversation. Give me the tea. And even for Facebook, if you can crush 3-minute videos on Facebook, you'll win. Facebook is rewarding people for making videos over 3 minutes, getting people on their platform, and they will pay you. Of those three platforms, Facebook is the only platform that will pay you money and usage rights for what it is that you're doing. So there's a way to win on every single platform, and you've got to find your fit and go for it. So
along the lines of the practical question, one that we get a lot from churches is, how do I decide what goes on my church account versus my pastor account? And Transformation might be the first example that comes to mind when I think of a thriving church account and a thriving pastor account. What were those conversations like? How did you make those calls?
That's so funny, because I'm going to give you an inside scoop. Internally, we felt like the church's account was not winning in comparison to Pastor Michael's account, because one, that brother is at 2 million and the church is at 600,000, and we've been kind of sitting in the 4, 5, 600,000 for a while. But I think here it is: every account needs a personality. So that's a whole other thing that I'm going to get to after I answer this question. The difference between the two is Pastor Michael is a personality. Your pastor is a personality. Give them a personality and let them post. And your church is an organization, is a community. So it's a little bit harder to win because there's no face that's just saying like, hey, follow me as we do this. But the mix is, whenever Pastor Michael is doing anything that involves the church, that isn't necessarily like a talking head invitation, unless it's a big video, then it probably doesn't belong on the church platform. So, but if pastors making memes that had to do with a sermon, bro, like that's a collaboration post. If he's actually making a video in the morning and it's like that Sunday walk-in video that now everyone's doing, that's easily a collaboration post to invite people to church. My favorite thing about social media is you can take posts down. It doesn't have to stay there forever. You're not married to the post. You can take it down, archive it. Maybe don't delete it, just archive it. So if you don't like it or if it doesn't fit, just utilize the influence and then take it down. So that's a whole nother thing. Collaborations are the answer to that problem, because you can now collaborate and uncollaborate. And you can also collaborate with 4 to 5 other people. If you are confused on what you should be posting on your church and on your pastor's platform, just have the collaboration and decide, does it apply to this crowd? Does it apply to the congregation? That's your first thing. Does it apply to the congregation? Does it help people at your church, or does it inform people at your church, or does it provide value to people at your church? Then yes, it should probably fit in the church's platform. If it doesn't, okay, great. That's specifically for pastors talking about his kids. We don't need to talk about the babies on Instagram unless it's a family post, unless it's hey, church families, this is what our kids are doing. Then that's a completely different conversation. So delineate what's for people and what's for the person. People include groups. People include different ministries. People include the congregation. People include teaching them, teaching your church how to be the church, how to be a Christian, how to love God. And on your pastor's page, you should be teaching fathers how to father in his everyday life. Your pastor should be teaching people how to love, teaching other people, other men, how to love his wife, how to lead a team. All those things are specific to him. And some of those like team things could easily go in the church, but you just got to use discretion in that way.
I've noticed that Pastor Mike has been doing a lot more fitness content in the last year plus.
Yes.
He's been quite transparent about that journey that he's been on. And it seems like people are really resonating with that type of content. And so he's continued to double down on sharing that part of his life. Was that intentional from the beginning, or was that kind of based on the feedback and traction that content is getting? Like, oh, people seem to like this. This aligns with our vision and values. Let's keep doing it.
So it's actually a completely different niche. There's vision there that I can't give up yet, but I really think he's going to do it. I think he's going to do it well. So when he started his fitness journey, everything he's talking about, even just this weekend, Fit to Finish, is a sermon that he preached recently at TC, because he was in a sermon series called Start Sharp. He knew he was supposed to preach that maybe 2 years ago, but because he wasn't fit, because he hasn't been sharp, it didn't have authority. So he spent 2 years working out, losing weight, in order to be able to preach that sermon series with authority. God told him, he told me in a conversation that God told him that the ministry will go as far as you are fit, basically. Like, it'll go as far as your body can take it, is what he told me. And he was like, bro, like, I'm just eating donuts and Popeyes all the time. You're not going to last long doing that. So he had to change everything about how he functioned, and he had to discipline his body to now have authority to preach things like, your body's a temple and you need to take care of it. You need to actually be fit, because God calls us to be fit. It's not about how we look to other people, but it's about this temple that we're taking care of for God, because this body is borrowed, and so on and so forth. So it actually was a thought 2.5, maybe even 3 years ago. And he's been taking action. He put a gym inside of his garage, hired a trainer. His whole family works out. Now all of his friends work out, and it's a part of his life. So, and there are plans there. And if you can predict it, then you can predict it. But like, that's to talk to a specific group of people. There's certain people that won't listen to you because you just don't do certain things. Like, I have like football friends, dude. Like, I have no authority there. Look, me and this water bottle are the same size. If you could, like, it's my football friends are not saying like, bro, you're not disciplined. You don't work out. Like, you don't even know what it's like to eat when you don't want to eat, because you know what it does for your body. Like, that's a very real thing. But like, all the other stuff, like, I could talk to you about it. Social media, we could talk about it all day. But football, I got no authority there. Working out, you ain't hearing from me. Like, I go to the gym, but I'm not really. So there's authority that comes when you submit your body to what it is that the vision and the plans that you have for it. So I'm excited for what's to come from it, truly.
How many accounts were you managing at Transformation? Like, how many different channels are you looking at being like, oh, we got to get content for this, like, I'm guessing it's a large number.
No, it's not. There's only just his account and then the churches and then the Facebook and then Twitter. But like, that's pretty, you can schedule out, you can listen to a sermon, get the notes for the sermon, take the notes, put those, in tweet versions, and then schedule your tweets for the entire week until next week. So you just do that on Monday morning, and then you'll never worry about Twitter ever again. Instagram and Facebook, they're tied, they're tethered. So whatever you post on Instagram goes on Facebook. That the only thing about working at Transformation that was hard was the sheer amount of content that I had to make for those platforms within itself. Because we at some point was posting 5 times a day. That is overwhelming. Like 5 times 7 is what, 35? That's a lot to make in 1 week, or every week. So I would say it was pretty easy. So easy that I was actually working with and for other people while I was working at TC. I was helping my friend Pastor Jabin Chavez at City Light. I was making content for Dr. Darius Daniels at some point. I was helping another church in Florida with my friend Pastor Donnie, all at the same exact time that I was working at TC. Were there limitations? Yes. But again, if you create a system, it's not that hard to create content for multiple people. So I feel like I'm almost at a point now where I'm making more content, or about the same amount of content that I was making at TC with all my clients now. So, and that's a lot because I'm working with quite a few different people, and to be just now hitting the threshold of, oh, this is about the same that I would make at TC is kind of insane to think about. But, at some point, five different pieces of content a day. And then you kind of you figure out a flow for it so that you're not crying at night and kind of going from there.
That's a high volume of content, and we know you were posting it to an audience of millions of followers. Never mind the potential reach thanks to discovery algorithms. So with that much content and posting to an audience of that scope, you're bound to receive surely lots of distasteful in the best case and lots of hate comments in the worst case. And this is a question we get often from churches, especially now as churches start to take our advice, start to post to TikTok and Instagram.
It happens for the first time. They're like, oh my gosh, what's happening?
Exactly. They go viral, which is like, this is great. And then they are receiving hate comments for the first time. So the question is, because I'm sure you receive, more of those comments than most people we've ever talked to. Like, how do you guys approach tackling those types of conversations and those comments and conversations, in the comment section or in the DMs? How did you guys handle the hate?
Man, I had a really hard time. I'm from New York City, where we fight first. Like, words like that was really hard for me. I was like, yo, you see this? And he's like, Ron, we don't do that. That's not your position. It's not your position to fight. And I'm like, but they talk about you, but like, I'll fight like on me, it's on sight. And there were many a times where he had to sit me down and he was like, stop looking at those. That is not for you. You're going to ruin your mind and hurt your soul by reading these comments and taking them to heart when they don't even really know us. They don't know me. They don't know the reality of who he is or the reality of who I am or who you are. And it took a lot. It took a lot of prayer, especially after the whole Easter situation. I had a really hard time. A lot of prayer, a lot of counseling, honestly, like with pastors. But essentially, here's what you should do. Don't read into it. Don't read into it. Some things you should be aware of, but you should also trust that there's people that are close to you in your life that have the ability to say, hey, that probably was not okay. And then you could take that and heed it and apologize and repent. That's a very real thing. Do that in private. Do that with people that you trust. Do that with people that trust you that are not going to turn on you, because there's a lot of people that will turn on you. It's going to happen. Jesus had people that did not like him. No one that should have loved Jesus actually liked Jesus. Everyone that loved Jesus were people that were just finding out about him, that were just learning about him. And he challenged them every single day. There's a word for people that are in the same house, that are supposed to be doing the same thing, and really are concerned about the laws and concerned about the rules and regulations and not about the heart and not about reaching people or healing people on the Sabbath. I'm not going to say what that word is, but you should be able to read in between the lines. So it's hard. Yes, it's going to happen regardless. People like that. It's a part of the nature. Like I comment things on Instagram all the time and I get hate comments. I get love comments. And it's just a part of the game. There's going to be people that don't agree with you. That's the beautiful part of being human. We have different opinions. And you know what? It's up to me. It's up to you as a thought leader, as a leader at any level, actually, to respect someone's opinion and say, hey, look, I'm glad that you have your opinion and I have mine. Actually, this is something that I believe is truth. And I'm actually willing to learn and grow, but I'm not going to argue with anyone. I'm not going to take this and make it something that is hard on me. Actually, I actually have a post on my Instagram. It's one of my pinned posts, and I was talking about meekness. And this guy was like, that's not the definition of meekness at all. And I'm like, okay, that's what Webster used to define meekness is. But this is what I'm understanding. This is what God is teaching me. This is what it means to me. And like somehow got laced into it and like actually like started commenting. And I was like, hey man, like this is all you, bro. Like it's okay. All love. That brother came to my church like a month later and was like, hey man, I know we had this conversation. I want to apologize. I apologize. And now we're friends. So like a lot of people, they're just thumb thugs, man. They talk behind screens, but like, if it was in person, they probably would never say that. So just keep that in mind too. People are a lot more bold on the internet than they are in person. I know men that won't even talk to girls that they're interested in. Mm-hmm. So, hey man, like they're probably not going to say anything to you in real life. So don't take it to heart because they don't even got the heart to probably say that to you face to face. So
thumb thugs.
Never heard that.
The new keyboard warrior.
Yeah.
Thumb thugs.
I really appreciate that transparency, Ron. I think you just being upfront and being like, yeah, like all this hate came in and it was challenging. I think like we all go through that when you start seeing these things, and pretending like you are somehow immune to it, I don't think is helpful. But talking about the journey of, okay, this is what it is. I understand. I am aware. And then finding a way and a posture to manage that and navigate it without resorting to fighting, without resorting to like pretending like it doesn't exist, and ignoring the fact that it's a reality of being part of social. What I also don't want to pretend that we're avoiding is the fact that you mentioned that you're no longer at Transformation. And the word on the street is that you and Pastor Mike, you pushed him too hard. And the Harlem came out, the Brooklyn came out, the Queens came out. Don't know what part of New York that you're from. And you're like, I've had enough. And you threw down and he couldn't take it. And that's but please tell us a bit about you transitioning out of Transformation. What happened there? And what are you up to now?
Yeah. So if that was the case, he'd probably beat me up because he's about twice my size and he'd actually be working out. And I could see what he lifts in the gym and he could lift me. And I don't want to ever do that. But it actually started. This is a long story. I'm going to say it really short. 2 years ago at VU conference, there was an altar call for people who felt the call to preach and pastor. And I was like, I think I'm supposed to raise my hand. And so I rose my hand and I just didn't know. But all these pastors were around me, like Pastor Rich, Pastor Chad, Pastor Mike, Pastor Charles, Pastor Rich Sr., I believe is his name, and a couple other people that would pray for me. And I felt like the basketball in what's that one movie, Space Jam? Felt like the basketball, and I was like, yo, I think I just got the gift, bro. I don't know, man. Like if all these people praying for me at the same time, like even like literally Judah Smith was preaching, he came to me in the middle of the sermon and prayed for. And I was like, I just got the goats of preaching to pray for me about preaching. So I think something is within me. So something started to stir within me during that time, and I think the following year, I was like, hey, God, I would love to see what that difference is. Just let me know. And then to be honest with you, I was like, yo, if nothing changes by like spring of 2023, bro, like I'm upset. Like no, you can't do that to me. And he was like, first of all, slowly roll. So spring happens and I get humbled. And then in the summertime, I'm on my way to New York City to go see some family. And on the flight, like when I land, God releases me. He literally like tells me when I land, the same way that happened to me when I got to Vegas for the first time. He was like, you're good to go. And I was like, what did that mean? Like, what do you mean good to go? He was like, you can start thinking about what it looks like to leave. And I was like, okay, cool. That same week, I got like 4 job offers, and I was like, that's insane. And then I just kept praying. I was like, hey, God, when should I leave? What does this look like? And why should I be leaving? And so I walked in that authority, and I started to pray about what that looks like. And he was like, this is June. And me and God are having this conversation. October is when you should leave. And I was like, hey, that don't really work for me financially. My lease is up in September. Where am I live for a month? He was like, don't worry about that. Leave in October, like I said. I'm like, all right, big dog. So I extend my lease. I'm paying double on my rent, all because God told me to. And God has rewarded me so much with me being able to work with a lot of really cool people. I'm still working with my pastor in Vegas, Javen Chavez. I'll still help with the creative team at TC. They're still my friends. It's still my family. I'm now actually working with this pastor. His name is Pastor Manny Arango, and he travels the legitimate world and preaches all over. And he calls me towards the end of this process, and he goes, "Hey man, I want you to move to Dallas." And I'm like, "Okay, like Dallas is cool, you know what I'm saying? Like I got my dream apartment here in Tulsa." He's like, "No, like I want you to move to Dallas. I want you to live in this house that you'll live in. It'll be an entire studio. We can make it look however you want, and turn it into a place where you can just film." So I'm like, "You're gonna pay me to film you and be like a TikToker, basically? Like you gonna give me a TikTok house? Like that's crazy." So I literally January 7th, I moved all my things from Tulsa to Dallas, and I've been traveling with him. I've been working with Elevation Rhythm and a couple other people too. And I just get to have fun. I get to make content that I think resonates with me and other people. Get ready because it's going to be the TikTok house. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm doing a lot more consulting with other churches. I get to have conversations like this. Literally this year, I've got booked for maybe like 4 or 5 different conferences. And I'm like, this is what I wanted to do. This is how I wanted to do this. That's where I wanted to transition into. And I'm excited to see what comes to fruition. And I'm praying that I get like 12 speaking engagements. I'm like, God, that's a lot for me. It's a little bit for you. So let's see what happens. But God's on the move, and I'm having a lot of fun in the process. And I'm learning a lot about submission and obedience and comfort. So it's been amazing.
Well, Ron, we can't thank you enough for spending so much time with us, being so transparent and gracious with the stories that you told and your own emotional and creative journey. Any parting thoughts that you want to leave Pro Church Nation with?
Here's my thought. Actually do what Brady says, because it could change your church. It could change your life. Be a part of this community. Something happens when you do things in unity. Actually, the Bible says this: unity demands a blessing. I want the blessing, so I'm going to function in unity. And I'm actually going to try and be consistent. If you take these things, they will work. We are both products of just going for it and it working. And we've learned a lot along the process. So like, if you're a part of this community, be a part of this community. And if you're not a part of this community, I'm telling you, not asking you, be a part of it, because together we're going to win. And I'm excited to see you win.
Beautiful capstone on this conversation, Ron. Thanks as always to everyone listening for your time, attention, and trust. And we will talk to you next week. Well, hey there, and welcome to the Pro Churchill Show. We're here to help you shut down anything. I'm joined as always. I'm joined by my co-host. It's Alexander Mills. And we're also joined by Ron Starling. Ron, is that your real name? And why did you change your name?